What are the differences between Bitcoin Cash and the Lightning Network? Well, before we get into that, let me just talk about why I think that I am a good person to make a video on this topic. And before I even do that, let me just say again, I'm in Japan right now. In case you're curious, Alex, I have a job that I have to do, which is why I travel. But yeah, hey Alex, good to see you, man. I am kind of ribbing him a little bit. But yeah, this is Japan, it's Uji. It is absolutely beautiful here. It's a rainy day in April. Right now I'm gonna be going to the grocery store and doing some cooking tonight, but I figured I would jump on a little walk and talk vlog, talk about Lightning Network and talk about Bitcoin Cash, some of the similarities and differences between them. So, why am I a good person to talk about this? Well, first off, I have spent extensive time using Lightning and using Bitcoin Cash. As you guys have seen in my YouTube channel, I have spent a significant amount of time in El Salvador, where Lightning Network was used for custodial apps that pretend to be Lightning but actually aren't, such as Chivo, which I've used extensively. But all of these things I've used and played with, and Bitcoin Cash, of course, I have used and actively use today. In fact, I pay some of my staff with Bitcoin Cash. So it's a cryptocurrency that I very much enjoy using, I very much like, because frankly, it just works. And it works the way that money should. All right, so I should also be transparent on why I am not a good person to make this video. So the reason is I have not personally run a Lightning node or a Bitcoin Cash node. I have not mined Bitcoin Cash, and I have not mined Bitcoin. So maybe that's something I do in the future, but I just want transparency on that. And I actually, to be honest, I think that's a good thing, in a way. Because for me, I'm a user. I'm not technical. And part of the reason that I started making videos on my channel about this topic was to show cryptocurrency and Bitcoin being used across the world from the perspective of someone who actually uses it. It's very easy, especially a lot of people who are into Bitcoin, who get so into the technical side, they never actually look at what it's like for the end user. This is especially true in Lightning, where so many people in Lightning are these engineers that kind of ignore how people actually use the coin and why it's a problem and why business people like me don't use Lightning and can't use it because it's not a good solution from a user experience point of view. So let's compare and talk about some of the differences between the two. I would call them coins. Lightning's not a coin, it's more like the Bitcoin equivalent of fiat. It's like crypto fiat. It's an IOU token. But yeah, I made some notes, so let's take a look. All right, so let's talk about the first, which is just usability, since I kind of mentioned that already. So like I've said, I've been in El Salvador and I've used Lightning. In fact, I had a problem with Lightning, so I got on a phone call with a serious Lightning user. In fact, this guy is a Lightning node operator who's extremely technical. And at that time, he was being friendly with me because I was very open to having my mind changed about Lightning and Bitcoin. So to his credit, he did a pretty good job in trying to help me and trying to work out some of the problems that I was having with Lightning. And of course, I was documenting everything that was going on. While I was in El Salvador, while I was on a live call with him, Lightning kept failing and he just said, well, I don't know. So go ahead and try scanning this code and see if you can send money to it. The app is so comically slow. It's so slow. Oh, okay. So try sending $5. It's not working, is it? It can't? All right, so there you go. He is not able to send Bitcoin to my wallet. Does not work. So that is sort of the first difference between Bitcoin Cash and Lightning, which is reliability. I have used Bitcoin Cash for many transactions in many places around the world, online, in many situations. And in every single case I've ever used Bitcoin Cash, or Bitcoin for that matter, I've never had a payment fail. Never. Which logically makes sense for money. If you have money, let's say that you go to your local convenience store and you want to buy a bag of chips. You open your wallet and you take out a $1 bill and you hand it to the guy, right? Like, imagine you do that, but a percentage of time, the $1 bill just like teleports out of your hand and back into your wallet. Like, that's illogical. It doesn't make any sense. Money can't do that. Money, you can't like fail to give money from one party to the other. Usable money doesn't fail. Otherwise, it's not usable. Money needs to have a 100% transaction rate, like in terms of success. 100% of the time I want to give someone money, that money needs to go to them without magic stupidity happening. With Bitcoin Cash, that rate is 100%. Even with Bitcoin, BTC, even though it's expensive, that rate is 100%, as it should be. Lightning, on the other hand, is not 100%. Lightning, on the other hand, not only is not 100%, but in some cases, it actively has a lower percent success rate the more money you're transacting. So if I try to send someone 50 cents, there is a probability that it will fail. If I try to send someone $10, there is a higher probability it will fail. If I try to send someone $1,000, it has an even higher probability of failure, and so on. In some cases, the probability of failure might be so high that it is not even worth sending. Now, the reason for this is technical. It's because you need to have liquidity between people you're sending payments to. And the higher amount of money you want to send, the higher amount of liquidity is required for every party that your money is going through. Why this is stupid is because for businesses who want to use Lightning to transact large amounts, you have less reliability the higher the amount. But actually, businesses want to have higher reliability the larger the amount. If I'm selling my house and my house is worth $500,000, I don't want to spend days or weeks looking for reliable channels. I don't want to risk opening a node with Lightning to send that money with a party who opens a node, and they have to have the liquidity, enough money to open that node. They have to have $500,000 too. I have to have $500,000 to open it. Then we transact, and then God forbid something happens with my computer and my node goes offline and the watchtower is not trusted. That's a whole nother topic, by the way. We're going to get into this video, watchtowers. The point is that things can go wrong with Lightning in payments, especially in higher amounts. That is not okay. Caillou dude. Frog. So, not good. Not good at all. With Bitcoin Cash, it works. It works the first time. It works the last time. It works at $1. It works at $100,000. It works, and it works, and it works, and it works. Now, if you're smart, you're gonna watch this and say, all right, all that's true, but to be fair, you would never use the Lightning Network to sell a $500,000 house, right? You would only use Lightning for like buying coffee or cheap transactions. And you are completely wrong. You are completely wrong. And the reason is fairly simple. Let's assume that the writer of the Bitcoin Standard, which is probably the world's most popular book on Bitcoin, is accurate in his belief that in the future, Bitcoin transactions are going to be like millions of dollars on the base layer. To send Bitcoin will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars, where it's as difficult to send money, or as expensive, I should say, to send money on Bitcoin as it is to, have an oil tanker send oil across the ocean. In that case, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be selling a $500,000 house on Bitcoin. with Bitcoin. It's going to be too expensive. Even a $100,000 transaction fee is going to be too expensive. 1/5 of the house sale you have to pay to transact the money. That doesn't make sense. So you are going to be using Lightning, if Lightning is the solution that people use in the future. And in that case, you're going to be using Lightning using custodians, assuming there's any custodians that have that kind of liquidity. And this is the big problem, is we can't have a solution for the future of money that requires huge fees to send. And the Lightning Network is not reliable to handle large payments. And really any payment, reliable. You know, there are many people on Lightning who talk about sending money on Lightning multiple times to try to hope one goes through. I've seen tweets about it. Money cannot fail to be transmitted and received. That's illogical. The next big difference between Bitcoin Cash and Lightning is trusted third parties. With Bitcoin Cash, you can use it. You can have Bitcoin Cash and you can send it to other people, and you don't need banks. You don't need middlemen. You don't need people who observe and watch and make sure everything's fair. You don't need government intervention. You don't need central banks. You don't need an account. You don't need a phone number. You can just have your Bitcoin Cash and you can send it to who you want, when you want, without having anyone else involved, okay? With Lightning, all of a sudden, that doesn't ring true anymore. And there's a few ways that Lightning fails in that regard. Let's talk about a few. Let's talk about the least dangerous of all, okay? The least problematic, I'd say, which is if I have money and I want to send money to you and we don't have a channel that's open, we need to have someone in between us, a third party, you could say, a trusted third party, you could say, that I send the money to him and he sends the money to you. That's not that big of a deal unless you are relying on that person and that person doesn't like you. For example, let's say you're in El Salvador and you're someone who has a wallet down there. And the primary node operator decides that you have the wrong politics and they're not going to transmit your payment outside of El Salvador. Now, this is actually more real than you might think. The reason is because the whole Lightning model incentivizes hub and spoke situations where you have a primary hub, a primary Lightning node that all the smaller individuals transact from. That is the future we're moving towards with Lightning. So in that case, you have to rely on a trusted third party. Now, personally, one of the reasons why you would get into crypto or Bitcoin in general is because you don't have to rely on third parties, custodians. You don't have to rely on other people. And with Lightning, there's going to be some reliance. Even in the least problematic example, where you have just a middleman who's doing the transaction between the two nodes, and he's not evil and he's not trying to silence you, he's just a business person looking to make money. Okay, fair enough. Not that big of a deal, but still kind of weird you have to trust a third party. Now, I'd say that this is the least problematic because in theory, not in practice, but in theory, you can open a node and that person you want to transact can open a node and you can do stuff between yourselves. But again, that's in theory. And the problem with Lightning, in my opinion, and the people who support Lightning, is that they're all theory mongers that aren't based in the real world. The real world is that is not how it happens. The real world is most people do not have the money to open liquidity, especially if they're in El Salvador, and they're on Lightning, and they do not have the technical ability, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Let's get up to more challenging versions of Lightning in terms of its ability to not work with a third party, which is watchtowers. So with Lightning, if I open a channel, and you open a channel, and we transact, one of us, either of us, can close the channel. And that's all well and good. The problem is that when I close the channel, it's not closed with necessarily the right amount. So put it like this. Let's say that we transact back and forth. We open a channel and it's for $10 and I send you $9. So now you have $9 and I have $1. Well, I can close the channel and say that I actually have $10 because I opened the channel with $10. Well, that's a problem. Because if I do that, I just stole your money. Now, there's ways that the Lightning Network tries to reduce that. For example, if you say, hey, actually, you owe me $9, and that's the most recent, and you tell that to the network within 2 weeks, then not only do you get the $9, but actually I get punished. I get punished. So you get all the money in that channel if I was dishonest. The problem is, I have no real incentive to be honest if I already was gonna have no money anyway from that channel when it closed. So the solution to this is watchtowers. Watchtowers are other nodes that watch our nodes to make sure that our nodes are being honest. Now you have to trust a watchtower node that our nodes are being honest. Where this gets really problematic is, again, if we're talking about large amounts of money and you have to trust a third party, you see where this is going? The whole point of Bitcoin is not trusting third parties. And if the watchtower node doesn't like you because you have the wrong political opinion, that's not good. Bitcoin should be trustless. You should not have to rely on anyone. So I could have even gotten into more details about how if your computer goes down, then it's even impossible for you to catch the other person being dishonest in their node, projecting the wrong, putting out the wrong information. And again, you have to rely on a watchtower, which again is all about trusting a third party. Okay, so not good. Not a good scenario. Finally, and the most important when it comes to Lightning Network, is liquidity. If you are in El Salvador and you make 50 cents a day, and Bitcoin is the money of the world, and you have to use Bitcoin, you can't use fiat or any other system, you've got a problem now. Because if you want to use your money and you don't have much money, to open your own node is extremely expensive because you have to pre-fund the liquidity for it. Or you have to do what people will actually do, which is rely on custodians. Now here's the thing. There is a difference. There is a very important difference between relying on a custodian because you can't afford financially to be independent, from relying on a custodian because you are a newbie user and you don't technically know how not to rely on a custodian. Do you understand why that's different? That is a massive, massive difference. The truth is, most people in crypto, whether it's Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin or whatever, will not want to use non-custodial. They don't want to have to worry about losing their keys, whatever. And that's fine. That's okay. That's choosing a more simple, streamlined solution because it's technically easier. And you have lower risk of losing it, although you have higher risk of a custodial stealing it. But Lightning is different because unless you have the money to seed your liquidity, which most of the world does not, you have to use a custodian, even if you don't want to, even if you technically can do it yourself. You don't have the money to. That's a different dynamic. That's a predatory dynamic. Totally different situation. And that is why Lightning and Bitcoin Cash are totally different. Lightning almost guarantees that the most vulnerable people must use custodial solutions. It's exactly what you see in El Salvador. The most vulnerable people down there that use Lightning or use Bitcoin are relying on the El Salvadorian government, which is just insanely problematic in so many ways, and you can watch my documentaries to kind of figure that out. I'm gonna go in and get some dinner, but we'll keep talking after I come back up. I got a really nice meal. I'm doing nikujaga, which is like a potato meat stew. So I got Wagyu beef, potato, onion, garlic, whole bunch of stuff. And I also got a snack while I walk, which is a tofu bar. I know it sounds weird, but it's absolutely delicious. I'm probably gonna offend some Japanese by eating it. You're really not supposed to eat and walk. And me vlogging at the same time. Right. Let's talk next about scalability. The difference between Lightning Network and Bitcoin Cash in terms of scaling and onboarding the world to a new form of money that separates the state from money. Just like we separated church and state, let's separate state and money. So can the Lightning Network do this? Can Bitcoin Cash do this? Well, let's answer the question very, very simply. Yes, Bitcoin Cash can do this. Bitcoin Cash can scale to be the money of the world fairly easily. And Bitcoin cannot, as we know. What about the Lightning Network? Well, let's answer that question with looking at some very specific numbers. Numbers that are coming from pro-BTC Lightning proponents. These aren't from people who disagree with Lightning. All right, first off, to get people onto Lightning, you actually have to get them onto Lightning. And that's a problem. The reason that's a problem is because there's a lot of human beings on planet Earth, as you might be surprised to learn. And the Bitcoin network has a 1 megabyte, more or less, 1 megabyte block cap. So to get people onto Lightning, we need to fill up those blocks. So here's what the math breaks down and tells us. If 90% of every Bitcoin block every 10 minutes was used to onboard people onto Bitcoin's Lightning Network, we would be able to get approximately 0.82% of the world's population onboarded every year. About 66 million people. Now, the Bitcoin network has to be renewed. So what that means is that by the time we get through 0.82% of the population, after 1 year, the Lightning Network is basically renewed. Nodes go down and go back up, everything gets refreshed, and we would lose everyone on the Bitcoin network and have to get them back on. Meaning, we could only have 0.82% of the world's population on the Lightning Network at any given time. This is a limitation that's in the Bitcoin Lightning white paper. This is something that they knew about from the beginning. This isn't a surprise at all. That's a problem. They knew. So how big would the Bitcoin blockchain need to be to accommodate people, the actual world, using Lightning? 144 megabytes block size? 133, pretty close. So we would have to raise the block size limit of Bitcoin 133 times to get it functional enough that the Lightning Network could be used.